Hey everyone. Today I want to talk about Leagues 4, my experience playing Leagues 4, and then just talk about some of the issues that I've had that I'd like to see, kind of resolved or fixed in the future leagues. For the most part, this video will be a little bit more critical because I did want to talk about, some of the major problems that I've had instead of, I guess, just showering praise. But that's not to say that I didn't enjoy leagues. I really did like it. I basically played it for all 8 weeks. Played 4 different accounts. Had a lot of fun playing it. And honestly, it was a really good time. I look very much forward to the next leagues, and that's kind of why I want to do a critique video where I go over some of the problems because I think it's good to provide constructive feedback about some of the issues because there were a couple of glaring issues that I think should probably be looked at. And while I might talk about a couple solutions, I'm not really like an expert game designer, nor do I know all the technical limitations that some of these problems might have. So I'm not here to like give you all the exact answers. I don't know how to solve all these problems. I just at least want to, open up the conversation and kind of share my thoughts as to some of the things that I would like to see fixed, I guess, going forward with the leagues. In addition, I will sometimes be bringing up other games as like a comparison. Please don't get too don't get too caught up in the comparison. I'm not trying to say that RuneScape needs to be like this game. I understand old school RuneScape is like its own special game and needs to be treated as such. The comparisons are more just to show kind of what industry standard is, and also just provide some kind of comparison as to what other games are doing and possible things that I'd like to see added. Don't get too caught up on it though. For the most part, though, I did want to focus on the fundamentals of leagues, not really like the fundamental of like the Trailblazer area restrictions, because for the most part, I think that the Trailblazer formula is well exceptional. I think it's really well done, and honestly, I think this one at least was very well balanced. I think most of the relics felt pretty damn good, with like a couple exceptions. I think like Equilibrium felt a little bit weak, but honestly, all the relics felt really good, and I was very surprised at the level of balance among the regions as well, which is something I wasn't expecting. I was expecting that there would be kind of like a very clear cut meta, and I think they actually balanced it very well among all the different combat styles. I played all three combat styles; they all felt pretty damn fun. Again, with just a couple of exceptions, like I think Mage relying a little bit too much on Candor in the desert, that should probably be looked at and break up, the power of Candor, I guess. But again, I'm not really here to tell you like why Trailblazer is good or what I would like to see for like another Trailblazer rerun, more so what I would like to see for leagues going forward. And as such, I've come up with kind of like 5 major issues. These are the commitment of a seasonal mode, a lack of an end game, little room for experimentation, inconsistency with how the game wastes your time, and a task list in need of a revamp. So let's go through those, starting with the first one, the commitment of a seasonal mode. So this might be kind of confusing. That's why I kind of want to start with this one. Also, because the more I think about it, the more I think that this is the biggest issue that would, at the very least, remedy, if not just outright solve a lot of problems that I've had and I've seen other people have. And that's that I just don't think that there's been this commitment to leagues being a seasonal game mode. It feels more of like this limited time event that just kind of happens every now and then. Um, Plain and simple, the biggest problem with leagues is we just need more leagues. It's just too long apart, I think, and that causes a lot of issues. So between the first one and the second one, it was about 11 and a half months. Then it was 15 months between Trailblazer and Shattered Relics. And now between Shattered Relics and Leagues 4, that's a 22-month gap, which is it's quite a bit. If we compare this to other kinds of seasonal modes, some of which that happen like every 3 months, every 4 months, every year, I think the 22-month just feels really, really bad. And I think another huge problem with that is that also there's no, I guess, consistency with when the next one would be. So it's not just like we need one once a year. But realistically, even with Leagues 4, I don't think that was announced until about a year and a half after Shattered Relics League. So right now, I am looking forward to Leagues 5. It's going to be a lot of fun. But honestly, I have no clue when that could be. That could be, in a year from now. It could be in 2 years from now. I really don't know. And I might not even get an announcement. I might not get even a guarantee about when that's going to be for like more than a year. And I think that feels really bad. And it ends up fueling a lot of problems, mainly in the fact that I think the fact that it's so limited and there's so little promise of when the next one will be that a lot of people just feel like they have to get like 120% of the value out of this one. The expectations, the hype, it's great, but it also makes it so that like every single leagues has to be so phenomenal. Um, and I think that because like people are expecting like, oh, I might not play another leagues for like a year and a half. That kind of changes how players interact with the game. They can't just come at it with more of like, oh, I'm just going to play this for fun, and then maybe in like when the next one comes out, I'll just play that, and I'll come back to it once. If I'm not having fun with it, I'll come back to it in the next one, basically, because they don't know when the next one. So I feel like they just feel obligated, or they feel like they have to play it like way more, way past like the burning point, if that makes sense. In addition, because it is so limited, I think for a lot of people, they feel like they can't skip it. They can't take a break. It's only here for like 8 weeks. You know what I mean? And let's say another game comes out. There were other games that came out during this league's four. It was also during a holiday. There's also things like a new Path of Exile season came out. I know a lot of people in my clan left to go play that and stuff like that. I think that because of that, it kind of just feels bad when you're competing with other things, and you know it just sucks to like take a break from a game that you don't know when the next one will be. So personally, I think that leagues would be a lot better if it was just on a consistent schedule, and you could expect here's when Leagues 5 is going to come out, here's when League 6 is going to come out, 7, 8, 9, blah 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 blah. And I almost don't even care how long that gap is, as long as it's on a consistent like seasonal schedule, as opposed to this like limited time event that we currently have, that just kind of feels like it pops up at random. For me personally, and I know this sounds like a lot, but I would like to see a 6 week season every 6 months, one of which would be a rerun of a previous leagues, and one of which would be something new. So the reason why it's 6 weeks, that's a shorter time frame, but we're getting two a year. Now, two a year does sound like a lot, and it is a lot, but that's because I really like leagues. I really like seasonal game modes. But I think that a smaller leagues that doesn't have as many changes, again, one of these would be a rerun with like minor tweaks. It doesn't even need to have like a whole new relic system. And then one of which would be, some kind of new idea. I think it would be an easier way to test out new ideas without having these high burden of expectation of like, oh, there needs to be all of this new stuff. And then there's just too much stuff that doesn't quite work. And I think that's something that happened with Shattered Relics, for example, was there so much new ideas tested out that nothing really quite landed. And I think if they had just tested out like one, maybe two of those ideas instead of like Renown and Fragments and Sets and leveling up, like if they had just tested like a couple of those, I think that might have been better feedback, and I think people would have enjoyed the game a little bit more. Again, 6 months is still a lot. I understand that two a year is probably asking for a lot. But I also think that, if one of them was a rerun, I think people would not care as much if it was a rerun, if they were still getting, something new once a year. And really, at the very least, I think that once a year is a good number to strive for, especially because there are other seasonal game modes like Dead Man mode. So if it was like 6 months, if every 6 months it rotated between like a Dead Man and a Leagues, I think that would also like that would be okay. I wouldn't really hate that either. But I do think once a year would be like a really good number to strive for, that I think a lot of people would, enjoy playing and getting a chance to experience that, knowing that, there's going to be a new one coming every year. You have something to look forward to. If you can't play this one, or if you just don't want to, maybe this, the mechanics don't really stick with you, or it just doesn't sound that appealing. Just knowing that you have something to look forward to, I guess next year is, I think that would be a much healthier and a much needed change to leagues. Okay, so I'm done begging for Leagues 5. Obviously very excited for that when it finally it'll happen, right, guys? It will happen, right? They're not gonna just cancel on us, right? Okay, so my second big point, and really why I think a lot of people burn out of the game, is that I think Leagues is suffering from a lack of a compelling endgame. Personally, the biggest issue here is the difference in how you approach the game after hitting your final tier just feels very, very different. So, in previous, this was like 15,000 points. Now it's 24,000 points to get tier 8, which is great. Feels like you have more progression to do. And that progression curve felt fantastic through tier 8. But I feel like after you hit tier 8, it kind of falls off a cliff as to really what's the point, in my opinion, of playing leagues past just like having fun. And don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with having fun. It's good to have fun. And when I say lack of an end game, I really just mean that I think that like, I'm not saying that you have to play this game forever. I'm just saying that I think like past tier 8, I definitely feel like it changes because there's like no new upgrades to look forward to. There's a really cool point, I would say somewhere around like tier 6, tier 7, where not only are you looking to get, league points to unlock your final relic tiers, but you're also possibly unlocking your last area, which is actually based off tasks. So that's like a different kind of progression tree. It's horizontal progression because you're working on league points and you're working on task completion, which rewards you for completing, a bunch of easy ones and stuff like that. So you're weighing like, do I do tasks? Do I go for like efficient league points to get like my tier 6 relic and then go back and unlock the last area? On top of that, you're also working on getting your last recall down, which would scale off your total level. And then you also might be working on some kind of gear in game, or perhaps completing some quests or some achievement diaries that you need to do. So in reality, you've got like 3 or 4 or 5 different like horizontal progression that's going on at the same time that really felt great and it was really compelling. Like I think in general, the progression curve just felt great up until tier 8, and then it was very clear that like, okay, I'm just playing this game just to kind of like mess around and have fun now. There's really nothing for me past tier 8, with the exception of um the cups. So, Addy, Rune, Dragon Cup, those were all past 24,000. I did go for Dragon Cup on my main. I did get it. And then on my other accounts they were all like around 30,000 points each. So that being said, I don't think Dragon Cup is that compelling, honestly. Because at the end of the day, it's just like a cosmetic little title to have. It's doesn't really do anything to like your game and stuff like that. So everything from 24,000 to 56,000 was essentially just like you're just playing the game and just doing tasks and stuff like that. And I would really be interested to see a game mode where league points remain relevant for your character progression past tier 8. They actually do something, even if those unlocks are significantly less, I guess, game changing as they were before tier 8. Don't get me wrong, I still want most people to get their tier 8. I don't want it to be like tier 8 is like 50,000 points and like the vast majority of players just never even get all their relics unlocked. But I think that just having something past tier 8 to continue to go for, continue to progress your character, would be an interesting change. And it might compel people to, keep playing, to keep grinding, even if they're not interested in like the little dragon trophy, which is, it kind of just sits in your player own house, really. Now, a couple things I've seen here is like upgrades to your existing relics. So, maybe every like 5,000 points or something, some of your relics just get a tiny bit stronger. You can like upgrade them, you can level them up or something like that. That might be something cool. Perhaps unlocking like another region when you hit some kind of threshold, like 40,000 points or something like that. And again, all these numbers are just completely arbitrary. Don't get like caught up on the specifics. That's not really what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to talk about the idea behind it. But like if you could unlock an extra region, maybe at like 40,000, 50,000, that might be kind of interesting to do. Um, Perhaps I think one thing that I considered was like maybe at like 30,000 points or 35,000 points, something like that. You could get like a free mega rare. You could get like a scythe, a Tumican shadow, or a twisted bow, or I guess a Zerite crossbow now, just something like that. Because you would just have like a guaranteed version of it, and that could be like an alternative. Maybe you could. So if you wanted to go grind the raid, you could do that, or you could try to hit like the league point threshold and you could get one for free. I don't think that would be like a game breaking change, but it would just give you something to keep grinding for, some kind of alternative pathway there. I've even seen some people talk about like having like a fully fledged like talent tree, like you might see in other traditional MMOs, and then you can just get like a talent point every single tier. And I don't know if I like that for the first like 8 tiers or whatever, just because I like that all 8 tiers are very impactful and they don't just feel like they actually feel like they're changing your account. I like that. I like the power of the relics. And if you had like 30 tiers, I think that like half of them would just not feel that impactful. Um, but I think like past tier 8, maybe like, once you got to like 20,000 points or whatever, then they could be a little bit smaller, a little bit of, just like tiny little incremental points. Maybe they add like 5% damage or something like that. That might be just something interesting to do. Just again, something to look forward to past tier 8. Something to actually feel like you're doing, not just getting the Dragon Cup. Now, with Dragon Cup in mind, or Rune Cup, it doesn't really matter wherever you're at, right? I just say Dragon Cup 'cause it's like the highest one, right? I love static thresholds. I think it is a amazing idea, and I would personally heavily advocate, or I don't think I would ever go for Dragon Cup again if it was percentage based, because static rank threshold felt so much better to go for. It was so much better to go for when I'm not like grinding against an arbitrary threshold. That does not feel fun to me at all. I would really hope that they keep with static thresholds. And I think for the majority of players, they seem to have, um, I guess, enjoyed that experience a lot more. Now, this time, there was a lot more people that hit the dragon threshold. It was like 3.5% compared to, the 1% number that I think a lot of people are still kind of like tied to a dragon. And it's hard to say why that is. Personally, I think it's just that a lot more people are incentivized to go for it when like when they know for a fact, like if I grind out these 10,000 points, I will get dragon, as opposed to like, oh, let me go grind out like 100 tasks, and then I have to play this like game of chicken with everybody else. You know what I mean? So I think that's why there's a lot more people going for it. Um, but you could see that even then, the fall off after Dragon Cup was like pretty damn. It was huge. I think like the vast majority of people who got Dragon got like 56,000, and they didn't do like a single task past that. So it really feels like for me there should be something. There should be just something to keep people playing, unless they want to just make Dragon the end game goal, and that's it. And to be fair, if you got Dragon Cup and you've been playing, I feel like it's okay to quit too. There's nothing wrong with that necessarily. Again, first point, I think people would be more okay with just quitting after getting Dragon if they knew that the next one was coming out in like 6 months, not some month or like year and a half or whatever. Okay, and while I do think the static thresholds are very good, this has brought another problem with it that I think has changed the end game for a lot of people. I think that there's been a lack of a compelling competition now. Previously, for a lot of people, leagues was a competitive game mode. Um, it was tied to a percentage. You were competing with other people. So if you were Dragon, well, congratulations, you beat 99% of the player base, right? There is like a real competition there. Now, I don't know if that's the correct path forward. If they don't want leagues to be a competition, that's okay. But I still think that I like that aspect. And I think that there should be some kind of competition added back. And right now, the only one that exists is essentially leaderboards, which I don't really think has been very successful, nor is it particularly fun, both as like a viewer or somebody who just wants to watch what people are doing, and also as just a player. I just haven't really ever felt compelled to go for a leaderboard, simply because the current state of leaderboards, in my opinion, is really boring and not very like it's not a lot of like desirability for me to actually go for. Basically, what leaderboards is right now is who has the most league points at the end of the season. And if you're absolutely cracked, you get every single task, essentially get every single task completed. I think people like Friend were able to do it in like 6 weeks, which is absurd. They got like 96,000 points, something like that. And I don't think that this is fun, because the overwhelming vast majority of players will never complete every single task. They just won't have enough time to do it, and you won't even get close to doing that if um, if you have other, obligations outside. You just won't be able to do it. You basically have to do this as like a full time job, which most people either don't want to do, or they can't because they have other obligations. So a lot of people will just never compete for leaderboards, because I just don't think it's particularly fun to do. In addition, just completing every task is not that fun. I don't. There's just a lot of tasks I just don't want to do. So yeah, I don't think that that's like a good goal. What I personally think is that compared to other kinds of games that have some kind of seasonal mode, so if I look at something like when Classic WoW came out, right? The first person, like Joker, was like the first person to get level 60. When a new MMO patch comes out, first guild to like clear the current raid, things like that. Or even in any kind of like ARPG, when those come out, typically there's always like some kind of video of like the first person. And like PoE, there's like a video of like who's the first person to kill like Uber Maven or something like that. I don't play that much PoE, so I don't know exactly how it works there. But the thing that I want to kind of focus on here is that I think static goals that you race for are far more compelling as a competition than a set time period in which you have to grind the most out of. 8 weeks of grinding is just not fun for most people, and that's why a lot of dragon players I've seen not a lot, but I've seen a good amount of dragon players that advocate for a smaller season for the sole reason that they're bored of grinding after like 4 weeks, but they've already invested 4 weeks into grinding for a leaderboard, so now they feel like they have to play for 4 more weeks, which is just really bad for everybody. It feels like they're not even having fun with it. They just literally want to. They just want to play the game less, so they because the competition is just grind for 8 weeks. It's really not. I don't think it's good for them. Um, Nor is it good for an average player. I don't think because average player is never going to play for 8 weeks, let alone if they want to, go take a break or something, or God forbid, go play a different account. Um, like you're hurting your, I guess, competition in the main one. As such, I think the more compelling competition, one that I would like to see, would be a competition based around a static threshold. So that could be, for example, Dragon. Maybe it doesn't have to be Dragon. Maybe it could be a bit lower, something that's around 2 to 3 weeks of game time. So like maybe like 40,000, 45,000. Again, numbers kind of arbitrary. But I think that if it was a static threshold and the leaderboard represented who was the first person to get there, to me, that would be a significantly more interesting competition, one that I would be interested in competing in personally because I could invest, trying to get, like, oh, I could try to get like top 100, top 200, top 300. I could see how my rank actually goes, grinding for that static threshold. And on top of that, it wouldn't take me the entire season. It would still last that like kind of 1 month of, I guess, hype period where people are still really enthusiastic about the game. And I think, yeah, for a lot of people, if that landed between 2 to 4 weeks of completion, that race would feel very, very interesting. It would also be fun to watch, the top players and see what they're doing, see what strategies they're doing, what relics they maybe pick to try to get, those top completions. If you look at it, like with right now, where it's just who has the most points at the end of the 8 months, there is a decisive correct option as far as regions and relics picked that if you didn't go, you will never ever beat them because not only you won't even be able to get as many points as them. So you lose the race by making a choice on like day one, which I think is really dumb and it's kind of silly. I think that if it was like, okay, who's going to be the first person to get like 50,000 points? There could be so much different strategies as far as regions, as far as raids go, that would be way more compelling, way, way, way more interesting. And even if you're not like top 25, which realistically, I think that's like what the leaderboards would be, it would be cool to like see what your rank was. And I think that they could still keep dragon rank as like the static threshold, but like perhaps having some kind of like badge or some kind of award for getting like top 100 or top 1000, top 5000. I think that would be really, really, really cool. Um, I don't know. I just think that that would be a much cooler competition. A static threshold that you're like kind of going for, and at that point, once you've hit it, okay, well, now you can do whatever. You can quit. You can do whatever you want, right? Okay, so I talked a little about competition. Sorry, my thoughts are a little bit all over the place because there's a lot to talk about and stuff like that. Um, but I think that without any kind of compelling competition, without anything really to do past tier 8, except for Dragon Cup, essentially the only thing that's kind of left is just grinding out for endgame gear. And unfortunately, I think the enjoyment of grinding out your endgame gear can be very different based on your luck. So, for example, I myself got a shadow in like, I think 10 kills of Tombs of a Masket. I know some people were grinding it for like 100 purples and still didn't get it. And I respect them for sticking with it for a very, very long time. But yeah, that is a massive, massive difference, especially in a game like RuneScape, where one or two items, such as a scythe or a fang or a shadow, can be so overwhelmingly polarizing to your, I guess, to the progression of your account. Going from a trident to a shadow was absolutely insane. It upped my damage by like I think like 30 or 40%. It was pretty damn massive. And basically, once I got the shadow, I could just trivially kill everything else to the point where once I could even comfortably start doing raids, there was really no point for me to do anything but raids until I get a shadow. That was like the most efficient use of my time. And that kind of sucks. And I think I would have enjoyed my mage significantly less if I had gotten like a dry streak trying to get a shadow. As a result, I think it is kind of vital to have some sort of dry protection at rates. Even at 5 times the drop chance, you can still go dry. And if anything, it just feels worse when people are getting like purples and purples and purples and purples basically every single time, and then you're like 100 purples dry with no shadow, which it can happen. It's not even like it's not probabilistically like as far as probability goes, it's pretty small, but like it can happen. It will happen to a good amount of players. Um, and I know some people are saying things like, "Oh, well, it's your fault for selecting regions where you have to go for those." But realistically, nobody's gonna predict that they're part of the 1% that goes like 4 times dry. They're just going to basically roll the dice, go do Tombs of a Mascot like 50, 100 times or whatever. And when they realize that, like, okay, well, I guess I'm just screwed this league, they quit. Right? That's what most people do. They quit. They're not gonna anticipate that they get unlucky. Nobody does that. That's just not how the human mind works, I think. So as such, I think that there should be some kind of dry protection. Ideally, something that's scaling as opposed to like a flat. Like I don't think it should be like, oh, you do Tombs of a Mascot, you get 25 purples on your 25th purple, you get like a shadow. I don't like that. I think that's kind of lame, but just kind of like a scaling chance that gets higher and higher and higher as you get more and more and more. That would be kind of nice. In addition, some kind of dupe protection might be nice. So like, I know some people they got like 6 Bandos Tacits and they couldn't get a Bandos chestplate after like 400 kills of Bandos. If there's some way to like trade it out or something, that might be kind of nice. Remember that in like the main game, if you're not playing an Iron Man, if you do get dupes, if you get unlucky or something, you can trade. You can go to like the Grand Exchange and eventually trade up to get the item you actually want. So dupes aren't that awful in the grand scheme of things. But on an Iron Man, yeah, I can feel really, really bad when you have like 6 or 7 of one piece of the set, but you're missing that one piece of the set. And again, Leagues is a limited game mode, so it would be I think it would be a really ideal time to try out dry protection on just like a couple items. Some of those mega rares that I think are like build defining and stuff like that. The biggest thing is that also it's just way too easy to get everything else. Like for the most part, the things that have like 1 in 100 drop rate, I mean you slam those so fast that like those things don't almost nothing in the game really feels that hard to get with 5 times drop chance except for those mega rares. So yeah, I think that there should be something done about just a couple of these items that people I think are having very different experiences based on the amount of luck that they get actually going for them. This is especially made worse by another huge problem that I had, which is that you didn't have the ability to play with friends for a lot of raids, specifically for Tombs of a Mascot and for Theater of Blood, because of the fact that there could only be 1 purple per raid, and a lot of times it was just more efficient to like for Tombs of a Mascot. Let's say you can do a raid and get like an 80% chance at getting a purple. Well, now if you do it with 2 people, right? You only have a 50% chance because at best you're getting like a 50% chance of getting that purple, right? It's split between 2 people. Um, and so as a result, you're probably better off just both of you doing the solos, getting 80% chance at a purple. And overall, you're going to see more purples. This isn't like a different MMO where you could like master loot and trade, like so let's say I'm a mage and a fang, I get a fang, get fang, fang, fang over and over again. I can't like master loot that or trade that to my friend. So it's not really worth it to do the duos with them. We'd be better off just doing solos. This is made even worse when you have a mega rare. So, for example, when I had my shadow, I didn't like it felt really, really bad doing raids with other people because not only was I basically capping the chance of like I was hurting the chance of them getting a purple, but basically I would just giga carry them. Like my shadow was doing like 75% of the damage. It would do way, way, way more than them. And because your chance of getting a purple is very much tied to how much damage you do in the raids, it kind of felt like they were just there as like just to boost the boss's health. So I had a bigger training dummy to like like smack down with a shadow. And as a result, when I did duos with friends, I often felt like I was just getting a purple every single time once I got my shadow, and they basically never got it. So I felt really bad for them because it's like, well, like it's like I want to play with you, but every time I play with you, you're always going to get the purple. I'm basically just getting hard carried, and I have like a 5% chance of getting a purple. That just doesn't feel very good. Obviously, those numbers are it's not exact, right? But yeah, I think that that's something that should be changed. Even if you could just get a purple in like your regular chest, that would be like a very, very simple fix, and then your percent chance is just whatever you have. But as it stands right now, that's just a huge, huge problem that you can't do a lot of group content with people, or at least it feels a lot worse doing group content than it should be. Finally, some other stuff about gear. I think for some gear that's locked behind multiple regions, it should probably be changed to like a drop. So for the big ones that were things like the Hydra's leather, to make ferocious gloves. It required Zaya for alchemical Hydra, but it also required Fremenic to make the gloves. And you didn't need anything from Fremenic. You literally just needed like the forge, which I think is kind of bad. For things that are a little bit more excusable, would be like the Dragon Hunter Lance. Um, you would also need Kandarin and Ascarnia for Barbarian Hasta training from Kandarin, and the Zamorakian Hasta from the God Wars in Ascarnia. So as a result, Dragon Hunter Lance required 3 regions, and that kind of sucks. Personally, I think the Alchemical Hydra should just drop the Dragon Hunter Lance, just straight up. It would kind of make it a little bit more compelling. It feels really bad getting drops from certain regions that like you just can't even use. Same thing with like an Avernic Defender, although that one's I think a little bit more excusable because it's kind of like an upgrade to the Dragon Defender. But yeah, that just feels really bad that the Avernic Defender from Theater of Blood is completely a dead drop unless you also go Ascarnia. I also think that they should probably consider looking at some of the items, such as the Zarek crossbow, that require like a secondary grind attached to it. So, for example, this would be like the chromium ingots for the rings. Zarek crossbow requires a bunch of like Nihil shards to make the dust or whatever for it. And I actually got the Nihil horn to make the Zarek crossbow, but I was like, you know what, I'm not going to go grind out like 100 more necks just to make this. That's just kind of lame. Same thing with Saturated Heart, although I think that one's a little bit easier. You also need like a bunch of the Ancient Essence to actually upgrade um, Imbued Heart to Saturated Heart. That might be that might not be as bad though, because I think you just that's just like the whole point of that upgrade system. But yeah, I think some of those things should probably be boosted because it feels really bad to have to do like a secondary grind on top of getting the item in itself. Now, maybe the difference of not having an end game is that there's a lot of replayability. Trailblazer is often seen as this mode that has a lot of replayability. You can, change what you do, change a lot of different paths. And while that sounds kind of true, if you think about it, there really isn't any replayability at all in leagues. Because well, you can't actually replay leagues unless you go make a second account and pay for membership in that. So it'd be kind of like saying Dark Souls has a lot of replayability, but you can only have one save file, and if you want to make another one, you have to go buy yourself like another copy of Dark Souls. Like that, that doesn't really sound very good, and I don't I don't think that that's a good thing. I think I would really, really be curious if there was a way to give people some way of like creating multiple character slots or something like that for league specific. Um, because if you do want to go and replay it, you have to make another account. You have to pay for it. And I think for a lot of people, that's just kind of out of the question, or it's just not something that they want to do. And it's also counterintuitive to a lot of the old school RuneScape fundamentals, which can kind of get away with not having a character select screen because well, you have access to everything. You can do everything on your main. You're a mage, you're a ranger, you're a melee character. You have every profession. So you don't have to specialize in anything. But in leagues, when you take that away and you're limited to something, well, now, being able to experiment with things kind of goes away. And that's kind of my third big problem is that there really isn't that much room for experimentation, I feel, in leagues. So without any kind of replayability, without another account, you're basically hard locked to your relics that you pick. And I think this leads to a lot of relic regret, where people try out a relic. Sometimes they don't even know what that relic does, or they might not even understand how that relic works. So things like Undying Retribution, some people didn't understand that it was, based around your area, it was based around the southwest tile, and then they didn't really like it as much. Soul Stealer wasn't quite as accurate with the description as I think people thought it, because it talked about something about minimum hit, and I think that confused a couple people. In general, same thing with Equilibrium too. I think some people got confused about the wording there. And I think this leads to relic regret when people are hard locked to relics and then they have no way of swapping it once you've made that choice. And I think that this also encourages people to make safe options because even though this year was really good on balance, I think that people will always gravitate towards what seems like the safest and the best option when they're hard locked to relics and they don't get to, experiment with anything else. So I actually think like Bloodthirsty was a really, really cool relic, but the Clue Scroll relic, which was on the same tier, was just so damn powerful. It was so obviously powerful that a lot of people, I think, just kind of defaulted straight to that one. That they never really even gave Bloodthirsty a try because it was like, even if it was not as bad as people thought it was, I think people just kind of always will go for the safe option when they can't change their relics and stuff like that. As such, I would again really like to see some kind of character select screen or just some way to play multiple characters. Heck, they could even make a whole trail like a whole Trailblazer mode around that where you have, three different characters that can trade with like a shared group stash or something like that. And then you might have some cool ideas of like, across my three characters, I can pick, all the different regions and then trade them around. And then I don't know, that just might be like I could see myself legit playing that for like months. I think that would actually be a really, really fun game mode. Um, but obviously there might be some technical limitations there that would prohibit you from doing that. So as a result, what I personally would like to see would be some kind of way to change your relics. Um, I don't know if I would like this before tier 8 because I think the weight of the decisions are very good. So maybe this could be an upgrade you get past tier 8 or after tier 8 because at that point you've essentially unlocked everything. Why not let people play with more relics? Um, and I've seen some people talk about like a prestige option where you can basically like click a button and it just resets your account back down. I don't know if I like that option because for one, I think it feels really bad to have this like button always in your mind that you can press to just like I think that will cause relic regret where you have like the grass is greener on the other side thing. It's like, oh, I can always like hard swap and like delete my account for this one relic. That feels kind of bad to me. Um, and then also, some people might regret it and they might want to go back. So I think that going back and forth feeling is why I would actually really like to see a dual spec. So let's say in this leagues, maybe at 24,000, maybe at 30,000, for example. Once you hit 30,000, you got like a second page of relics that you could swap to at a bank. And now you could pick 8 new relics, but you can only pick one page at a time. You know what I mean? And so that way you could pick like a new combat relic and stuff like that, but you couldn't like swap between both of them on, a whim between every single boss in a raid, for example. And obviously, I think this would probably have to change how some of the relics are approached. Obviously, people would just pick the Farmer's Fortune one, swap to the page that has Farmer's Fortune, and then get all the benefit of Farmer's Fortune done right away. But I think that once you're past tier 8, anyways. Does it really matter if you give people like a bit more options, a bit more of like a god mode thing just to play around with more of the relics? To me, Trailblazer is all about being hard stuck to those regions and having to make the choice of your region. So I think being able to open up the relic decision would be kind of a fair balance to give people some more ways of playing around with the different relics that are there. It really does suck that like there are like I tried out almost every single relic, but I still wasn't able to like get Equilibrium done. So that would have been really cool if I could have like at least tried out Equilibrium, but just seen if I liked it. It just feels like content that I missed out on. Next up, I want to talk about inconsistency with how the game wastes your time. This sounds kind of mean, but honestly, it feels like sometimes they try so hard to make the game faster. They give you 16 times experience, 8 times mini games, stuff like that. But then there's also some stuff that's just like it's just needlessly time consuming to the point where it just feels like it's an oversight. In particular, one of the biggest changes that I really liked in Shattered Relics that I'm kind of sad was quests being auto completed. Based on your regions, some regions basically had all their quests auto completed, and some had like tons of quests that you basically had to do. I know that Mauritania, for example, you had to do like half of the vampire quest line before you could even access like um, Darkmire, which is like one of the biggest region or one of the most important regions of Mauritania. There's a lot of good skilling methods there that you would want to go there for. So yeah, I think that there should be an option to autocomplete quests, and then you forsake the experience rewards. So that way, if people want to do if people want to do the quests, maybe they're very good or efficient at doing quests, and they want to get the experience, they can. Otherwise, you should just be allowed to skip it because yeah, I don't know, it just feels really bad that you still have to do quests to unlock content. And after you've done quests like 4, 5, 6 times, it's a seasonal mode. You're going to be doing these quests often. I just feel like there should be some way of skipping it if you just don't feel like doing it. Next up, shops were a very, very good change this leagues. I like that they have essentially infinite stock. You can keep buying over and over again without having to, open and close the shop like you did. That being said, I feel like the change made essentially you used to be able to just buy out like a full inventory of whatever they had. So like let's say there was one sapphire in stock, you could buy like 28 of them at once, right? Now you can still do that. You just have to click 28 times, which it kind of just feels like There's no difference. It's just like needlessly straining my wrist and giving me insane wrist pain, which was really, really notable when the vast majority of people are going to be selling like death runes or chaos runes to afford um, a tokel to get like a gem and stuff like that, or to get all those stuff. And honestly, my wrist just started cramping up so hard because I was like selling 10 at once, click, 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 click like that. And it's like, I feel like there could be like a really, really easy fix to just like sell X amount. Like you could just sell 5,000 at once or something like that. Or instead of going down in price with every single sell, it would always remain the flat value price. So if you're selling like, instead of selling 10 or selling 50 or selling one, it would give you the same per amount. So you would always sell 50. But yeah, selling like 10 at a time was just like, yeah, my wrists were just getting strained, and it felt like it didn't, it wasn't changing anything, it wasn't making the game any less broken. It's just like now you just have to pay in like wrist injury to do all this stuff, which is just kind of silly to me. Again, with these small time wasters, I feel like the current iteration of Slayer I personally liked, because I think that picking your Slayer task is a pretty powerful, it's pretty powerful, and I like just having a lot of Slayer points to spend on. However, there were kind of two issues: is that one, you didn't really have anything to spend Slayer points on except for skips, and because you had so many points, you would end up basically just skipping your way to a couple good tasks anyways. So there were a lot of times where I would basically be picking my task anyways. I just had to skip like 8 or 9 or 15 times to do so. With the Bloodthirsty Relic, this wasn't that awful because it actually gave you an option to skip right away if you wanted to. But if you didn't have the Bloodthirsty option, and even then you still had to navigate through a lot of menus, if you didn't have it, you had to do like it was just pick a task, go to the rewards, skip the task, pick a task. It was just so much like, it was just needlessly annoying to the point where I almost wish like if there was just like a right click skip option on the Slayer Master, I feel like it would be so much easier or something like that. But yeah, I just felt like Slayer just felt worse than picking your own tasks, because I was picking my own tasks anyway. I just had to I just do it like talk to a guy like 15 times, you know what I mean? And just feels really bad. It reminds me a lot of the people who do like Inferno speedruns, and then they have to do like just a bunch of crappy tutorial tasks and just constantly skipping, and it's just like it's just so needlessly annoying for leagues that I would really like to see that changed. Finally, there were a lot of tasks, and we'll talk about tasks next. That's the last topic, but there were a lot of tasks that I felt were just a little bit too long, or kind of rewarded the wrong thing. So, for example, Marks of Grace not being boosted doesn't really make sense to me. I don't know why they're not boosted. Laps of agility courses probably should have been boosted, especially when you have like the monkey laps in Kandarin. If that got like the 5 times or 8 times bonus, I think it would be a lot more doable. If you only had to do 250 laps multiplied by 8, that would be 2,000. And they could obviously adjust the points amount. I don't think anybody cares. Like, I don't think people are concerned about 1,000 points being tied to the Apatol monkey course. It's just that, it just feels really, really bad that it takes so long. It took me, I think I did a 23-hour stream straight doing all those monkey laps, and I enjoyed it more than I should have, but not. It didn't last. It didn't last the whole time. 250 laps would have been just plenty. I wouldn't have had. I wouldn't have had a problem with that. In addition, there's been a couple things that kind of still stand out. So like the Temperos, Wintertot, and Giant's Foundry kill counts. You just have to do like a whole bunch of them. That it ends up being more efficient to do them inefficiently. So I would do Temperos. Like I would literally one down it like solo, because if there's somebody else with me, it would actually slow me down. Giant's Foundry, the meta was just like smashing swords. Like you take like bronze swords and just like break them, because it wasn't actually rewarding like good play or something like that. So yeah, I would personally like to see those kind of things actually reward proper play. So like for example, getting a certain amount of quality from the Giant's Foundry sword, or for like Temperos, it could be based on how many pools you fish from, like how many permits you get. Basically, that way you still want to get a lot of permits per game. It's not just go and kill Temperos 100 times. I think that would be like a cool way to change it, because otherwise it just felt like I'm just here for a really, really long time. Yeah, and also there's a bit of inconsistency with how some of the things were boosted. Like I think in Guardians of the Rift felt really, really long and boring to me, because it you didn't get like the boosted points from it, even though I feel like you should have. All you got was like a boosted drop rate. So yeah, that just felt really weird to me and a little inconsistent. That I would just spend so much more at Guardians of the Rift. I basically just never did. I did like I won one game, and that's basically all I did. Okay, finally, we talked a little bit about tasks. I kind of just think that in general, the task list needs a bit of a revamp. One of the biggest problems that I have with the task list as it stands right now is oversaturation of content for certain things. Mainly, this is going to be clues and combat achievements. Let's start with clues. I think that there are just way, way, way too many tasks to do for clues that it really feels kind of like a chore. And I think a lot of people pick the Clue Score Relic not because they actually enjoy doing clues, although it was kind of fun. I enjoyed doing clues with the Clue Score Relic, don't get me wrong. But I don't think most people are choosing Clue Score Relic for that. I think they just choose it because they see like 5,000 points from clues and they're like, okay, well, I gotta pick this. You know what I mean? Like because you're not getting those without the clue score relic. You're just not. And yeah, I just don't think there should be that many tasks and that many points centered around clues. Um, that being said, I also like I do think that you're not supposed to do every single task. I don't think you're supposed to do every task. I think that's the intention. That's why I don't really mind like the super huge like kill count ones because I don't think you're really supposed to do those just for the people who are like kind of insane and stuff like that. Um but yeah, I just think that there's some content that has like too much, way too much for it. The other one is combat achievements, and this is a much bigger problem because instead of like clues is a problem because it was based off what relic you had, right? If everybody could have the clue score relic, I wouldn't care that much about clues. But if you didn't, you were giving up a lot of points. Combat achievements has this problem with regions, where some regions are massively more influential as far as how many combat achievements they get. Personally, for me, I really enjoy doing combat achievements in leagues. It's a lot of fun, and you get to do some of the PVM challenges that you normally just aren't good enough to do, or you just don't really care to like struggle through. And you can kind of like cheese your way through some of them. I think that's a lot of fun. I'm really glad that they updated it so that you got the combat achievements from other regions. I was really disappointed when I found out that I won't be able to get the elite. I won't be able to get 800, and I won't be able, or like 800 points, and I won't be able to get 50 combat achievements done based on my regions. So because of my regions, I was locked out of like a lot of point thresholds that were pretty easy to get if you were in other regions. Probably the biggest offender here is the raids regions, especially Zaya, which has an absurd Mauritania too, but I think Zaya has an absurd amount of points coming from combat achievements. And keep in mind that Zaya is already the region which has the most amount of points, period. So yeah, it's pretty rough that if you didn't go Zaya, your maximum point threshold was a lot lower. Um, and and the weird thing here is that it doesn't just double dip in combat achievements. I actually looked into it, it quintuple dips, so it dips into it 5 times. There are tasks for completing all of the combat achievements for Alchemical Hydra and for Chambers of Zarek, so I'm counting that as one. There's tasks for completing combat achievements, just like the raw amount of them. There's tasks for getting a certain amount of points, so like 700, 800, all that stuff. There's tasks for getting the tiers completed. So I think Elite was like 812, but 800 points is also a task. So if you're able to get 800, which my regions did not let me, I was locked out of like hundreds of points there. And on top of that, there's also speed tasks, combat achievement speed tasks, or league tasks for completing speed tasks. Which, if you didn't have a good region that didn't have a lot of speed tasks, you're kind of screwed. The desert, for example, only had like 2, and I think like Zaya has like 7 or something. It's crazy. There's just so many for there that it's like you can do it one time. You get like 8 speed tasks done. It was so ridiculous. And yeah, looking at that it really kind of killed my enthusiasm for combat achievements. I was having so much fun with them until I realized that like they're kind of a waste of time because my regions of like Kandarin, Desert, Asgarnia were just like not good for combat achievements. So I was like, yeah, it was kind of a bummer. I don't know. I just felt kind of bummed out about that. And I think that they should probably look at that and just reduce the amount from some of those content that like is restricted based on your regions or your relics. Again, it wouldn't be a problem in like Shattered Relics. That's why this feels like it was just a remnant from a previous league where they just dumped a bunch of combat stuff. But like if not everybody has access to those and those are counted as global ones, it just artificially like super inflates the points that you get from some regions. Yeah, so as a result, I think the point balance between regions just kind of felt bad at times. I didn't really care about it too much because I never really went past Dragon, and that's why again I feel like if there was a competition, I would be perfectly happy. I wouldn't care as much about this if it was like a competition, and every region could get 50,000, and even if some regions had a higher max amount, maybe like those raid regions they take more time to get. But as it stands right now, it feels really bad that like if you wanted to get like number one on the leaderboards, for example, you could kill your whole competition on day one because you made the wrong choice as far as regions go. That feels kind of weird. Okay. Um, Next up, just talking a little bit more about tasks. I think that there's kind of been a lack of like interesting tasks that are based around your skill. This is largely from them taking away some of those combat achievements ones. So, like in the past, it used to be that there was a specific combat or there was a task for completing the fire caves with just melee that eventually just became the combat achievements. I really like those. I thought those were a lot of fun. I really like things like the Sepulcher speedrun, where you have to complete it in like 6.5 minutes. Those are really, really cool tasks, and I kind of wish we saw more of those. I don't really know if I could come up with ideas for everything, but I just even things like the agility arena where you have to do like 30 without a mistake. I think that those are like kind of cool, and I really like those kind of tasks that encourage you to like play the game differently, or they like reward you for having like a good skill level. I don't know. I just those tasks to me are just more interesting, um, and I feel like we could kind of see more of those. And then finally, as far as the task list goes, I think that there's too many like scavenger hunt steps. I'm kind of torn because I know some people really like these, but there just feels like there's a lot where I'm just like talking to a NPC or like using an item here, and I felt like all of those just felt more like I was like just going through the OSRS wiki and like looking up how to do them more so than like actually having to do anything interesting as far as tasks goes. On one of my accounts, I played a randomizer where I would randomly select what task I did, and as a result, I basically skipped out on doing a lot of these. And honestly, for me, I really enjoyed that. I felt like every single task I was doing had like notable account progression involved in it. I wasn't just going down a laundry list of like, here's 100 of the easiest tasks to do, and they all required me to just go on like a freaking world tour scavenger hunt as I like do these very like boring kind of easy tasks. But again, I know some people like that, so that might be a bit of a hot take. Um, but yeah, that account felt really good because also the progression was a lot slower, and I wasn't like wasting my time just doing like a laundry list of tasks. So I really like that one, and I would be kind of curious to see how leagues would be if they like basically just cut the task list by quite a bit. They just got rid of like a lot of the easy ones. I feel like almost all the easy tasks can honestly just be like removed entirely. And I would be curious to see how that would work. But yeah, I don't know. That might be me personally. All right. Anyways, I tried to organize my thoughts with this video, but for the most part, that's basically the big stuff that I had. There's a lot of little gripes and stuff that I could probably get into, but honestly, I've already like rambled long enough, so I think I'm just gonna call it here. As always, guys, I do want to remind you that I really, really do enjoy leagues. I'm not doing this to be negative or try to like feed negative criticism after the game. I know a lot of people are already kind of like, oh man, I can't wait for Shattered Relics to come back. That one was way more fun. I'm not really here to do that. I just want to open up the conversation, offer some of my ideas, and I hope that this was in somewhat of an organized fashion because I know that this was probably a little bit all over the place. So yeah. As always, guys, thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I really, really loved Leagues 4. Can't wait for Leagues 5 to come out. I'm hoping we get an announcement sooner rather than later, like in the next couple of months. I would just like to see that Leagues 5 is coming out. Basically, that's all. I just want to know Leagues 5 is coming out next year. Just that's all I want to hear. You know what I mean? And yeah, that's it for me, guys. That's it for Leagues 4. Again, thank you guys for I guess letting me do this as like full time. I really enjoyed it, and look forward to continuing with old school RuneScape content, whether that's seasonal game modes like leagues or deadman mode, or just playing the game as a whole. So yeah, appreciate it. Thank you guys for the support, and I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks. Bye.